For those of you that are just signing on and joining us, we're just going to wait a couple of minutes before we kick off. All right. Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai, ki hapuru Aotearoa. Welcome to our Community Governance New Zealand Board Talks series. Today, our Board Talks is about what does digital and cyber security mean for our not-for-profits. We've got a fantastic lineup with us today, but before we begin, we'd just like to get to know who is on the call with us. If you'd like to put your name, your organisation or the board that you represent, something, and also maybe something that you're doing for Matariki this weekend. So if you'd like to share with us where you're from, your name, you can put that in our chat function. Whilst we are progressing with our panel, you can ask us questions in the chat function and we'll do our best to respond. And we'll also be providing you with links and information as we progress. Our Board Talk series is for 1 hour from 12 till 1 o'clock. And like I said, we've got a fantastic panel with us here today. Kia ora, Murray. We've got Murray Sterling from the Muslims Association Canterbury. Don't think we've got kia ora to Hillary and Katie. They're on our panel, obviously. Anyone else would like to share where they're from? More than welcome. Got Robin, kia ora. Tania, Cotta, CE, Physical Education New Zealand. Sounds like she's having a nice long weekend in Wellington. Kia ora, Lorraine. We've got Ian. Kia ora, Kate from Rotorua. Going for a swim. Nice. Freezing, but sounds amazing. Belinda, so welcome. Robert from Greengrass Accounting. Golden Bay, working. Oh, hopefully you can get a break there, Robert. Okay, so thank you to everyone who's joined us. Like I said, Board Talk series is a bi-monthly series. It's designed by our not-for-profit community for our not-for-profit sector. So all of these topics have been, they're topics that our community have said that they need and that they want. So now I'd like to introduce you to our panel. Welcome panel, we can turn your cameras and your microphones on. Today we've got Anthony and he's from Target State. We've got Katie from Social Good and Hillary Walton from Cordia. Tēnā koutou, no mai haere mai. So who'd like to introduce themselves first to everyone?
I feel like top of the list probably goes first, don't they? Unfortunately for me. Hi everyone, I'm Anthony McMahon from Target State Consulting. My background is IT management and IT oversight, and I work with a range of not-for-profits providing virtual CIO services to them. The virtual piece means I'm really there, but just working for them on a consumable basis as they need. Great to be here and look forward to sharing some ideas with Katie and Hills.
I can go next. I'm Hillary Walton and I'm the Chief Information Security Officer of the Cordia Group. Cordia Group is a business-to-business telecommunications company and we also operate in the areas of cloud, cyber, of course, and connectivity as well. My role though is very much the internal security of the organisation, so it's my job to keep the business safe and secure and make sure we have the right security controls in place.
Nice.
Kia ora, Hillary and Anthony. Tēnā rā tātou katoa, ko Katie Brown tōku ingoa, he urio nō rau kawarawa ko Ngāti Whātua. Hi everyone, I'm Katie from Social Good. I have a little business called Social Good that focuses on social media and digital comms. So really interested in helping people deliver their messages on digital channels and in particularly in a safe way as well. Kia ora.
So thank you for all being with us today. As it is actually Volunteering Week New Zealand, thank you for volunteering your time with us. A shout out to Havana Coffee Works, that also are our sponsors, and each of our panel guests will receive a nice little gift pack for your time. Right, now digital and cyber security. We're going to kick it off with our first question to you all. So I'd really like to explore the terminology, like help us better understand what does digital and cybersecurity mean. Who's gonna kind of demystify this for us? I might pick on Anthony to start again.
I was hoping you'd pick on Hills on this one, but I might throw to her halfway through, and she can critique my response on this as well. But from a pure IT manager or organizational perspective, digital and cybersecurity for me is about securing the tools you use, whether that be software or hardware, and also making sure you're making the right decisions with information shared online. So that's that cyber element coming into it. And that security comes from making sure you've got antivirus protections, making sure you're not just throwing personal information out into cloud services, and that you've actually got good password standards in place around the organization, and that people are just doing their best to keep everything contained and not shared in the wrong way. I guess that's my take on it.
Oh, I can probably come after you then, Ants. So for me, like for example, if I'm just defining that term cybersecurity, it's really about layers of protection. So an analogy that I didn't come up with myself, but I quite like, is that, you know, it's about putting more protection and layers in place. And if that's done right, that's why we have things like firewalls and antivirus and passwords, as well as things like password managers and two-factor authentication. So to reduce your risk, what you want to do is make sure that your hacker, the cyber criminal, has to jump through as many hoops as possible before they can get to your valuable information. So the analogy is you've got your crown jewels. You might put that in a locked box, and then in a safe, and then in a vault. And then you're going to build a fortress around that, maybe a moat, and have a drawbridge, and so on and so forth. And it's having those additional protection measures in place that really kind of stop the wrong people getting into your precious data. And for me, how the digital part kind of comes in is I think, you know, we talk about digital businesses, but it's actually just that it's business as usual now. So all businesses are going digital, whether you kind of think about it or not, all businesses are digital. And so security has to come with that, because as we become dependent on digital, we can also become kind of vulnerable as well. So it's a big risk for organization. It's no longer one that, you know, it's not if you're going to be attacked, it is when. So hence why the two go hand in hand.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Hilary. And Katie, what do you think about this digital space? You're an expert in the online social media and Facebook. What's your kind of insights?
Yeah, I guess from my corner of the world, I'm really focused on social media and digital in that respect. So anything online, websites, social media, any networking channels that people choose to converse on. And if we're relating that to the security side of things, it's making sure that you've got all those measures that Hilary talked about around two-factor authentication and all of the other safety measures that you can put into place into existing tools that we use to communicate.
Okay, so I'm going to ask our audience online today if they've got any questions. I kind of have been asking, no one so far is asking any hard questions, so that's good.
Can I just add one more thing, Rose, before you move on, just on the cyber piece, just to kind of get the message across. And the reason why we go on and on about it, and we talk about incidents increasing and the threat environment getting worse, is because what we're seeing is there's this arms race going on at the moment in terms of cyber. The cyber criminals are upping their game. They've got more sophisticated, more automated tools, which just make it easier for them to actually, you know, disrupt your business. And I guess what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are keeping up enough so that you're not kind of left there holding a sword while the cyber criminal has a, jet fighter, for example, if that makes sense.
So it might lead into our next question, which is going to be some of the getting into what will affect our not-for-profits in particular. Okay, so let's start out with some of the areas that our not-for-profits could be affected by cybersecurity issues. So some of our not-for-profits, as you'll know, some issues are we don't have a lot of money. Is that a good excuse or not? We have data like email addresses, contact names, that kind of thing. So maybe some privacy. We might, if we're lucky, have a website up and running. That might be from a local person. So how much protection's on there? We have bank accounts. We have the whole kind of, things that we are moving online. So what are some of the biggest kind of risks that could potentially affect us that you are either seeing or you've had experience of that you could share with us?
I'm happy to start on that one. So not-for-profits are a really interesting space, particularly with cybersecurity, like you say, for all the challenges that you do have. One thing I've noticed is that when I think about the not-for-profits who have been attacked, there is this kind of one, it's kind of a saving grace, but it's kind of not. It's the fact that the public will, if you have a data breach or a cyber attack, the public will maybe more forgiving with a not-for-profit compared to a really commercial company, if that makes sense. For example, if Cordia, my company, gets a cyber attack, it could literally be an extinction event for us because we are building our credibility on having good cybersecurity. A not-for-profit is in a slightly different place. However, it's going to depend on the type of data that you're holding. Like, for example, if some credit card details get stolen, that's pretty bad. But people may still use the service. However, if you're a not-for-profit that has lots of vulnerable personal information about vulnerable people, then that's a completely kind of kettle of fish. So I think from a not-for-profit perspective, you really need to be clear on what are your most prized data and making sure you're protecting that. You may not have to protect everything, but it's just whatever that gem, that crown jewels really is for you. And if I think back to the cyber attacks that have happened on not-for-profits, from my perspective, it tends to be attacks against websites, particularly if people are entering card details in those. It might be attacks against some of the cloud-based services that you use, like maybe you're using Dropbox and things like that, and then kind of the credentials have been stolen in a cyber attack and compromised that way, or maybe attacks against your network as well. Yeah, it's the privacy law, I think, in particular, that not-for-profits have to watch out for, because there are some legal implications of having a data breach where you have to report it into the Privacy Commissioner if it's reaching certain harm. So for me, those are the top ones that come to mind, but I'm sure some other speakers will have some other ones to add.
Just to follow on from that, Hills, I think there's also the element of, and any organisation can experience this, but the insider job as well. So it's not just what we're risking from outside, but it's what we're protecting from the inside. There's stories regularly of people committing fraud through internet banking, or sharing information they shouldn't be, or having access to information they shouldn't be. And that's where taking even just regular security around some of our tools is quite important. If you think of banking, for some of those organizations which might be small enough to really just run on a personal account rather than business accounts, hey, it's great that you've got that, but the difference between a personal account and a business account is the business account gives you a little bit of auditability as to who's doing what and who's authorizing payments and moving payments at any one time. That personal banking may not give you that same level of auditability. And it's the same with the other tools you're using as well. Think Dropbox or OneDrive or email, is you can have a pretty good audit view. If everyone's got their own log on to a system, you get a good view of who's doing what, and are able to come back and go, hey, we know who shared that information, we know who they shared it to. Whereas if everyone's logging in on the same email address and password, you lose all that sight. So if information's gone, you don't know. I mean, often it's an accident, but you don't know if it was done deliberately, and you can't trace that back and find out, have you got someone who's acting against you, working for you. So that's just one of the additional areas that organisations really need to be thinking of as they go and tighten up their security settings as well.
And just adding to that is from the social media side of things, there are a lot of scams, and particularly I've seen around the prize draws and things. So when people are, as soon as you start to pay to get your message out into people's feeds and into social media, you're raising the profile, and that opens you up to scammers, and quite often it's bots coming in and trying to influence the people who want to actually genuinely have a conversation with you. There are some things that you can put in place around that. And then the other thing would be impersonation as well. So particularly in this not-for-profit space, we do run the risk of people pretending to be you, and particularly if you're receiving donations and things like that, it's really important to make sure that you have things like validation and the verification tick, those sorts of things, to let people know that you are the genuine account and not another impersonator.
Yeah, so we've had a comment from Murray just about that publicity and how it can raise some big issues for you that you're probably never going to expect, especially with the terrorist attack in Canterbury. So that sounds like the worst kind of thing that you can deal with, and then you're dealing with kind of online. So I guess it's kind of making sure beforehand that we are prepared, isn't it? So we're not waiting on the worst case scenario kind of things to happen.
Yeah, Rose, that sort of thing happens all the time. It certainly happened with the terrorist attacks. It happened with the earthquake. It happened with COVID. Cyber criminals will jump on these kind of world events that are happening at the time. So that's really common. To move into a bit more of a solutions mode, if I was a board member for a not-for-profit or managing a not-for-profit, there's probably three things I really think about. One is two-factor authentication, or multi-factor authentication, is just such a key layer of defense in an organization. It means if you enter your details, your login details and password where you shouldn't by accident because you've been phished or scammed, they can't get into the account unless you authorize that actual transaction. So that's a key one. I'd look to ask questions about whether you have in place. And then wider than that, I think it's important that you think about what other critical controls you have or don't have. So I would look to the CERT NZ 10 critical controls, and I'd just ask my IT people to say, tell me what we have or don't have. And, maybe you don't have all of them, but then at least as a board or a senior manager, you can make some decisions about moving towards that. And because security is a journey, everyone knows that, but at least you're kind of eyes wide open to what's in place and what's not. And then the third thing is I would be looking to what other not-for-profits are doing. So not-for-profits tend to be quite good about sharing about their cyber attacks, for the reason I kind of mentioned earlier. The public isn't quite as harsh, depending on the situation, of course. So often you can form groups with other not-for-profits, and they'll talk about cyber attacks they had and how the attacker got in and the lessons learned, because it's better to learn from someone else than be, the one that's attacked, and be teaching the lessons to others.
Yeah, I love that quote, Hilary. So security is a journey, if I got that right. So
absolutely, for everyone. Yeah.
And I think the other one that you can do is make sure, like on our board agendas, we have health and safety. Now, this needs to be a regular thing. Right up the top of our agenda is our cyber security and our health checks in that space. Something else before we move on, I had, a question was around, if you have a privacy breach, who do you report it to first?
I can do that one. I've written our policy around that at work, so I know the procedure. Okay, so if you've had an incident and you think there's some data that's been leaked or stolen, what you need to do is form a kind of group of people to kind of investigate it and find out what's going on, obviously. Then go to the Privacy Commissioner's website, and there's actually a little kind of calculator in there, and you can go through about 5 different questions to work out whether you need to notify that event or not. And it will ask you things like, were there other security controls in place? Was it personal information? And then kind of the number of people involved and things like that. And that's a super handy calculator which is really good to do to work out whether you need to notify to the Privacy Commissioner or not. And it also shows really good due diligence, because you can talk about, okay, we had an event, data breach, we went to the Privacy Commissioner, we did this thing, it said we didn't have to. So that's kind of the process flow. And if you do have to notify it to them, obviously you notify it, and then they'll kind of work with you, and there may be some kind of public notification that has to come out the back of that. But the key thing is assessing whether serious harm has happened or not. And it actually is really quite a high bar to have caused serious harm to individuals. And the serious harm could be financial, emotional, a bunch of kind of different things.
I think
That's
there's
exactly
just
the answer I'm looking forward to, Hilary, so thank you. Yep.
just to add on to what Hills is saying there, when they put through the privacy changes 2 or 3 years ago now, one of the requirements that came out of that was that someone in every organization needs to be accountable for privacy. So it's not that you need to have a dedicated role for privacy or a dedicated chief privacy officer, but someone, whether it's at a board level or at an executive level, or if you're big enough within the organization, needs to have that role of chief privacy officer, so that they're responsible for the process and responsible for reporting as well. So that's one area organizations can definitely start with. I personally would love to see them regulate and mandate the same thing for a chief security officer within an organization, and because security and privacy, while they go hand in hand, they are slightly different. But it's definitely making sure you've got some clear roles and responsibilities defined so that people know where they have to go to, and also people understand what a security breach is. You know, it can be as complex as hacking or phishing or a ransomware attack, but it can be as simple as accidentally attaching a spreadsheet and sending it to an external party.
Good point, Nance.
Yeah, great point. And I think that's our panel. We've got a comment in from Claire. So kia ora, Claire. I think kind of Anthony might have touched that on a little bit about what she's asking, which is just how to upskill organisation. It's probably what you touched on, isn't it, Anthony, about making clear roles and responsibilities and not just leaving it up to urgent board meeting now kind of thing.
Yeah, a little bit, and there's plenty of content out there. Hills talked about the CERT website and some of the material they have. Australia's got what they call the Essential 8 as well. But as you explore around those, there's a lot of material online where you can share, whether it be videos or blogs or reading that just get people aware of what they need to look out for. And I think personally for me, it's more of a hygiene thing that you want to keep doing on a regular basis. I think if you stop the organization every year to talk about cybersecurity once a year, it loses its impact. But if you have it as part of that hygiene, part of board meetings, part of team meetings, just getting people to call out digital stranger danger, for want of a better term, and understand what it looks like and what it means. You know, everyone knows not to get in a stranger's van when they're giving out candy, but does everyone know that they shouldn't click on that link in an email as it comes in?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I've done a little bit in the security culture area. I find it really fascinating because I'm an organizational psychologist by trade, so the culture piece really appeals. And I think with security culture, you know, the first step is making people aware of what you expect and don't expect in terms of security behaviours. And then the next step is getting them to actually act on those, harder than you would think to actually make them do it. So in terms of making them aware, and I'm thinking of not-for-profits, like some might be really small, some might be up to 100 or more, like there's a whole varying range of sizes of organisations, but you need to have at the very least like something written up that says what those expectations are. It's usually in the form of an acceptable use IT kind of policy, but you know, what do you expect in terms of can people use Dropbox for work, or is there some kind of other organizational app you want to use? What kind of password strength do you expect people to use? If there's an incident, where do they report it in? You know, when people are working from home, does that mean some different kind of behaviors like destroying anything they print out, you know, thoroughly? And those kind of IT, you know, what you can and can't do with our IT systems and our information. So that's your first step. The next step is you want to communicate that to people. And you might do that through, you know, in their induction or an annual presentation you do, or you might get a little bit you know, smart and use like an e-learning kind of module that people do every year, just to remind them of the basics, because you need to repeat and repeat and repeat these messages to people, as well as it's mentioned the kind of ongoing communication. Like, you know, we've just hit Matariki, so I'm reminding people about how to stay safe online during holidays. Maybe don't take your work device, because if it's not stolen, you could kind of just lose it or damage it. Not using insecure Wi-Fi's, not letting your kids use your computer over the holiday period, you know, whatever it is. And then I think also the biggest thing with culture is it comes from the top. So if you as a board and as an senior management team are not role modeling those security behaviors, no one else is going to bother either, because culture absolutely comes from the people above us.
Yeah, those are all fantastic points. So we will hopefully try and collate some of them, and if also equally, Hilary, if we've got some great links we can put in. But I think the Privacy Commission, some basics on what is expected is really fantastic kind of tip. So don't leave it up to chance. If you're kind of clicking onto some dodgy links, it's going to take you into a whole other land that you don't really want to be going down. So I think we're going to move into the digital space, which is about how a not-for-profit might be affected in digital space and what we can do to protect ourselves. So I might throw this out to Katie. And Katie, I've put that in there, is our social media expert for Community Governance New Zealand. So very lucky to have you there. And I was thinking, Katie, you might want to share some experiences that we have had.
Yeah. So again, I'm speaking from the social media digital comms space when I'm talking here. So there's a lot of things that you can do in the back end as well to add protections. But you know, one of the things that we get anytime we post with Community Governance NZ, if we use the word Aotearoa, we quite often have kickback where people say it's New Zealand, it's not Aotearoa. So in terms of, you know, responding in that sort of space, it's about having some really clear policies around where you stand on these sorts of things, how you might respond, what your escalations might be, if there were any further attacks or any further comments, or if things got inflamed, what your process is. So I really like to start with having really good page policies first, and that's about your rules of engagement for anybody engaging with you in a digital space. So making sure that you're really clear around, you know, we exist for this reason, this is how you can interact with us. We will take action, or we will remove your post if it does this, this, or this. And that's really important to have really clearly on your page. That gives you permission to remove posts, report posts, and remove people from your page if you do need to do that. The next thing you need to do there is if there are any threats or any real concerns, it needs to go through the NetSafe space, so be reported through NetSafe, and if there are any immediate threats too, is to go to the police. So having a good process in place as to what to do if people are attacking you in your social media spaces is really important. And then one of the other little tools that I like to recommend to people is setting up page moderation, and that's where you can put in a profanity filter, where you can put in any words you can possibly think of that you don't want to be posted on your page. That provides you a really good filter for spammers, for people who are just there to attack your page. We use them. So I worked on Unite Against COVID, and we had all sorts of comments all the time coming through, thousands of comments. So we put things in like 5G, like pandemic, sheeple, those sorts of words that were not helpful to the conversation and weren't actually asking a question, and it meant that it would raise the visibility of the questions for the people that actually did have a question they needed answered from us. So good page policies, and then check out the page moderation. I'll pop a link on how to do that next.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Hilary, would you like to share any digital examples that you might have?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have that many particular digital examples of this particular one. So maybe jump to Ants, if that's okay.
I'm just thinking on this one that it's sort of similar to the old PR policies that organisations used to run and still do. Let's be honest, they haven't given up on that. I spent a large part of my career at BNZ, and I know there was about 4 people of an organisation of 6,000. There was only about 4 people authorised to speak to the media on behalf of the bank. I've got some friends in government who have gone through media training because of their seniority, so they can speak to the media with authority, and they've got that level. I think the same thing comes in for digital and social channels, is reminding people, talking about policies and some of the things Katie covered off there, but also just making it clear who can and can't talk about your organisation online and who can post under the brand, because there are going to be a range of viewpoints that work for your organisation, and you've got to be careful that the wrong person isn't posting against the brand to come out with it. There's so many stories out there of brand ambassadors who have posted on Twitter or on Facebook, and they've been using the brand page and they posted a personal view, and it's not gone well. But also the flip side to that is there's stories of people who have posted, general managers who have not taken well to feedback online and have come back out all swinging. Maybe they should have spoken to a PR expert or a digital channels expert before doing that. So it's making sure you're clear on who can talk in those channels and what they're going to be saying as well. I think that's a huge one.
That is such a great point, Anthony. So yeah, often with boards that I've been on, and we will make sure that it's often the chair has that kind of role, isn't it? So who's your key speaker, who signs up on the media releases, who's got a barking dog? It must be, is it Hillary? Who's it?
Not me actually, but I do have 2, but no.
No, that's one of mine. That's one of my 2 today.
Rose, I did just think of something quite important for that question, which is about reporting these type of incidents. So there's sort of 2 channels, and it depends what you're reporting. If you have a cyber incident, if the not-for-profit business has a cyber incident, then you report that into CERT NZ. We've got them there with the critical control, so you've got the link. They can help you with advice and guidance and help you manage that. If something happens and it is more like bullying and harassment, hate speech and extremism, or maybe you're getting people contact you of having self-harm and suicide, or there's, child sexual abuse material, whatever, if it's that kind of more, if it's that vein of things that are happening, then you can report those and get help from NetSafe. So NetSafe's link is there as well. So yeah, there is a couple of different organisations in New Zealand to help. So CERT NZ if you've had a cyber attack, a data breach, or NetSafe if it's more around bullying and harassment and hate speech and that kind of thing.
I think these are such great links and where to go, because often you just don't know. So I think what we'll do post this is we share this recording out on our website and through our e-Pānui, but I think we're going to have to we'll send something out in addition with the links and what to do with those kind of examples. So I think that's really fantastic. Something else. Sorry, Katie.
I was just going to say that the NetSafe process is really good. So it is documented. It is important to take note of URLs and times and usernames that are being reported. So take screenshots, but really good at following through. And recently that process was used to, what do they call it, unmasking one of the trolls who was attacking a politician. So that process was put to the test essentially, and they were able to take action against someone who was pretending to be someone else and attacking a female politician. So it is a very helpful tool to be able to use.
And reporting it on the platform itself, Facebook or Instagram as well, so that account is shut down and taken down.
Yep.
I really like that, because it's something our not-for-profits we could start doing and tracking some of this data, because we are moving predominantly online. Something else I just wanted to, as an example that I've come across, is webinars. So I know of another organisation that don't allow our audience to make comments, so you don't have any access because they've been kind of harassed and there's been really bad comments, or people have jumped on and they've had past issues with the organisation. So yeah, just something to raise that community governance. We haven't had any of those kind of experiences, but it does happen if you're kind of in this live environment, not that we're going to welcome this on us and touch wood, but that, yeah, has anyone come across that when they've been on these speaking panels, or what do you do if you're in this kind of format?
So, I mean, I always like to prepare for anything that you post online or that you're doing online. So I usually work with clients to build, a response Bible. So thinking about all the possible questions and things that people might ask during the live, have an admin person in the back end ready to send links and respond to people's questions throughout. But you can also turn on a couple of little tools if you're on Facebook Live, for instance, where they delay the posts, the questions that come through. So you can have a bit of a delay. You might require them to have an account for longer than X amount of time, which gives you some, it's not just an account that's been set up to troll you. But it's also acknowledging that there might be a small, loud group, but there's also a whole lot of other really interested people. So you kind of just have to press on, especially in these Facebook Live spaces. You can just watch any of the 1 p.m. updates to get an example of all the different possible comments that could possibly come through. So it's about being prepared, have a bunch of answers that you're ready to roll, answer the questions that are relevant. But I haven't seen anything be completely inundated with negative comments that it would take over the whole purpose of the panel. So I think press on and be planned, be prepared with your content and answers.
Yeah, good. Great feedback, Katie. Okay, so we're going to move out of all the kind of issues that we can come across and all the kind of bad things that happen online, and we're going to move into some of the positive things that we could potentially introduce into our not-for-profits. So we talked about some of the issues we face in the online world, but what are the advantages our not-for-profits could use or develop? So really talking about in this tech space, Anthony, he was the brains along with Katie behind our website and working with us on our developing that for community governance. But what's that kind of, what could we do in this not-for-profit space better, or kind of things that you might offer up?
I'm going to jump in on that one, because I think one of the first things is don't assume that everything's out of your reach financially. If we keep even at a simple level, organizations like Microsoft and Google and others who have license agreements in place have a not-for-profit or a charitable licensing model that companies can leverage. And for example, Microsoft 365, the ticket, the standard package license for just give you all the apps and everything you need is $18.90 for an organization, but for a not-for-profit it drops down to below $5 a person. So, almost a quarter of the price of what a business should pay. So if you are looking at software, make sure you ask that question: do they have an NFP or a charitable pricing model that you can leverage? They don't always publicize it because they don't want people just coming in and trying to buy it. But they will share it with you pretty quickly. Microsoft, like I say, they're one that definitely do. Google for Google Workspace definitely do. If you're looking towards CRMs and tools like that, I think HubSpot do as well. So that's one. Developers and software partners that are out there also run a similar model where they're happy to work with not-for-profits. I think a lot of organisations are coming to grips with the fact that NFPs have financial constraints, but still have the same requirements as a big business and a big organisation. So they're happy to build their models around that, because sometimes having an NFP on the banner head is more valuable than a large financial engagement from them. The other one I'd say to look at is look at what your risk appetite is for your market share and the market you're in, your market share, your revenue, your size, everything around what you're doing. Just figure out what your risk appetite is. Not everyone has to be a courtier in terms of all the security controls they put in place. They may only need to be 2 or 3 levels below where the courtiers and the banks and the insurance companies are at, because of the level of data they're holding. So don't think you have to have the all singing, all dancing, but look to what others are doing. And probably to tie into that last one is just start talking through the community, through people that you're dealing with, find out what others are using, and start to share ideas. I think is the main one. It's have a plan in place. find out what others are doing, and then make sure that plan fits your needs as well. So those are probably the 3 big ones from me. Don't think that everything's out of your reach financially. Have that plan and have a plan that's fit for you, and find out what other organisations might be doing too.
Yeah, right on, Ants. I was definitely going to mention the Microsoft programs as well. Amazon also have not-for-profit programs as well. They'll help you move into the cloud. Actually, Microsoft helps you move into the cloud as well with particular, an amount up front to kind of get you going. I'm not sure if we've got many charities on the call, but there is this place called TechSoup NZ, where registered charities can get cheaper software and refurbished computers and technical training. So, you might get a really good computer for about $250. So that's something to look into. And then on top of that, the old business.gov.nz website is a treasure trove of training resources. They've got this thing called Digital Boost, which is, can teach you your not-for-profit things like how to create a digital strategy, how to improve sales online, how to update, your website to increase customers, and even, how to think about data privacy and things like that. So Digital Boost, which is from business.gov.nz, is excellent as well. If you haven't already, check that out. I'll chuck the link in.
And then just from a social media perspective, it's generally free or very low cost to be present on the digital channels, and they're building some really cool apps and things that help you deliver your business or your service. So if you do need to do some targeted marketing to certain areas, you're only marketing to those small areas, so you're only paying to reach that specific group. It's a really effective way of being hyper targeted with who you want to connect with. There's also some cool things that you can do with automation as well. So you can put in automated messages on your Facebook and Instagram. So if people ask you about the same thing all the time, you can pop in some automated messages that say, hey, if you want to know about this, here's where you go. Or if you want to do this, or if you want to donate, here you go. So you can kind of gain a bit of time. If you find that you're responding to lots of people, you can put in some free automation tools, which are built into the big giants like Facebook and Instagram to make your life a bit easier. And then there's, like the Digital Boost with Facebook, there's a Facebook Blueprint, which is basically this whole huge suite of marketing tools and learning tools, courses, all free to help you learn how to market on their channels. So I'll pop a link to both of those things in the comments.
So many good links in here. I'm just so tempted just to start clicking and having a look myself, but I really should pay attention. So I just want to come back to Anthony. What's this Microsoft? Because you've talked about it, but then I'm not sure what's the kind of offering or the platform that we would use it in, like the kind of context.
So it's just the standard Microsoft 365 licensing. So email, apps, tools, all the packages you get out of that. So if you hit the Microsoft website straight away, they tell you, look, it's $18.90 to get all of that and all you can eat. And I know some of the smaller NFPs and some of the emerging ones get put out by that cost, and particularly charities as well. The NFP ticket price, it's like I say, I think it's under $5. It may be like $4.90 or whatever, but it's under $5. It gives you all of that, and what that gives you the ability to do is secure your information away rather than having it in a public Dropbox or a public Google Drive account. So you can put some controls around it. You can put those password policies that we talked about around it, and you can make sure you actually know who's doing what, but without having to spend the same amount. If I think of my company, there's only 4 of us in the organisation. We've all got a license, but it costs $100 a month to run 365 just to keep the information safe. If we were an NFP, and we're not going to register for one, but if we're an NFP, we could cut that down to $20 a month. So a fifth or a quarter of the price overall.
And actually, when I last looked, if you are 10 users and less, there's a free option for registered eligible not-for-profits. But it's all the apps in Microsoft. So you've got all your information in one place and you're protecting it, but it's also migrating any on-premise information into the cloud. Plus, there's options to look at some of the other tools that Microsoft have around Microsoft Dynamics and Power Platform and dashboarding, and yeah, the whole Microsoft world. Basically, there's a not-for-profit option that you can look at.
So how do you know, like, are you supposed to ask your website company, or are you supposed to, when are you supposed to upgrade all these kind of things and make sure that you're staying current? Is there something that this can fall off the radar for a not-for-profit, or how do you kind of manage this?
I jump on the Microsoft website because there's heaps of good information on there, and we need to find the link. Ants, maybe you can do that while I'm chatting. But yeah, look on the website and then speak to your IT people. They may have a contact already with Microsoft if you're already using Microsoft and you haven't got the kind of not-for-profit option. Otherwise, I'd just contact Microsoft through the website and follow your nose from there.
Yeah, and probably just to build on that. So I'm still just trying to find the link, but to build on your question there, Rose, I think it's how do you know that comes into the risk appetite that you've got. Talking to your tech partner if you have one. If you don't, at least working with someone to build a tech strategy of where your weaknesses are. One example of one of the NFPs I worked with, I've worked with 3 in the last 6 months, but one of them had seen significant growth through COVID and through the lockdowns, just because of the market they were in. And they'd gone from a very small organization to a moderately sized one, but they hadn't scaled that technology at the same time. One of the other ones that I work with, I've got over 150 staff, large enough organization. They had a tech partner, they had everyone. I came in to help them actually build out their roadmap so that they were investing in the right places as well. So it's making sure that you're working with someone to actually to start to call out those things that you might not know about or might not see, where you can actually build a roadmap and then take that to your tech partner or work with someone to start delivering that. Because while it's a licensing cost, what Microsoft NFP licensing do, if you look at that 150 seat organization, they already had NFP pricing, but let's say they didn't. It's 150 by, let's say by 20, it's about $3,000 a month. My maths is right. Straight away, we could cut them right back to $750 a month. So they've got $2,500 to spend somewhere else in the organization.
That's really what I was looking for, is that not everyone has these big like IT provider or someone who can kind of look after it. So often it might just be a bank account and you got some signatories and you don't really have a lot more else. So great, we're definitely going to check out that Microsoft and see about how not-for-profits can use it. It sounds really affordable.
And just I'll throw it out there off the back of this. If anyone wants just even a quick 15-minute call to see where they're at, and if they do need some help, more than happy to jump on a call and even point you in the direction locally of people that might be able to help you.
I think that's the other one, is who do you go to, and who can you, what advice can you get? I really like the idea from other not-for-profits, so I'm definitely going to be sharing out that if people have got really great, fantastic kind of systems in place, to share that with us so we can on-share it. So we're coming up to our last question before I can let everyone go. And this is really, before we wrap, where do you think the future is for our not-for-profits to govern in an online world? Any trends you're seeing overseas or global? Kind of putting that out there about preempting, future thinking kind of state, and what we might pick up or share with our not-for-profits.
Oh, I can start. So I'm seeing a lot more transparency in terms of the way people are governing online. So I've seen a lot more meetings being broadcast live and letting a lot of people join in and take part in something that would normally just be behind a closed door, and people wouldn't have access to that knowledge. So I'm seeing a lot more transparency in all of these spaces, which means that hopefully we're getting more interest in governing, more diverse interest in being on boards as well. So I think that that's a really cool thing happening. There's a lot more storytelling coming out as well. So where people are utilizing the digital channels to tell their story and connect in a deeper way. And then charitable giving is a collective action. So there's this, I think there's a couple of charities on here, but there's this recent study, and it's around rage donations. So where people feel inspired to go and donate because they've been triggered by something that's happened politically or something that someone said. So I know that Trump was spurred a lot of people into rage donations where they feel like they need to do something good to counteract this bad thing that's happening. So what I think that means for our charities or the people that accept donations is that there's a big group of people who are willing to take action, and they just need a bit of guidance as to how to support, and that's all you need to do. You just need to say, hey, here's a flag, this is a way that you could support. Hey, there's this thing that's happening in the world, and this is somewhere where you can channel that good energy into. So I think that you can flip some of the bad things that are happening into some real good action, and people want to know how to do that. So I think it's an exciting time for charities and not-for-profits in the digital space.
Yeah, thank you, Katie.
Just as Katie was talking there, I'm just dropping a couple of links into the chat as well for anyone who can't sleep and doesn't want to sleep. They're just real-time heat maps of using data of just where cyber attacks are happening, and you can see a lot of it going around. But it gives you a little bit of context that this is not going away. If anything, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And with the way the world is going, cyber security is going to become more and more prevalent for us. I think with the invasion of the Ukraine, Russia started that with a lot of cyber attacks on Ukraine. China are constantly hammering people, and there's a lot of countries out there. It's that first link, threatmap.checkpoint.com, you'll see even America takes part in it. So we can't assume that we're going to be safe online. And we have to make sure that as organisations, as directors, as boards, and as leaders, we're making decisions that are protecting that information that we've got as well.
I've got an idea. It's a little bit out there though. I really love keeping up with kind of emerging technology trends, and there is this kind of shift that's happening at the moment, and I think Katie has kind of touched on it. Like, community is huge for not-for-profits and charities. Like, people support those because they really believe in the cause, hence why telling those stories is so important. And that's where I think social media has been amazing for businesses, but not-for-profits as well, because they can really speak to their audience and their community straight away and connect with them. Well, there is this kind of shift happening at the moment. So if you think of social media as Web 2, there is this whole Web 3 thing coming, which is based around the consumer blockchain. And so this is the whole kind of NFT or non-fungible token space, which some may have heard of, some may have not, some may believe in, some may have not, but it is an opportunity that I think charities and not-for-profits should look at, because you can kind of afford to be a little bit more riskier potentially. And then the thing about NFTs or non-fungible tokens in particular is that it can provide an ongoing revenue stream for your business that you've never been able to do before. Like, maybe every year you have to go back to your funding sources, you need to raise money from the communities. With NFTs, it can actually be an ongoing royalty that you can get potentially forever and ever, if people find your NFT desirable. So how that might work is you might have a particular ambassador for your not-for-profit or charity. Often there is. You could look to get them to create an NFT because they're already a bit of an influencer ambassador. It might be that you collaborate with existing artists or creative people. And look, I'm not saying this is what charities, I'm just saying it's something that charities should look at on the horizon in terms of emerging tech and how your marketing and fundraising can change in time with consumer blockchain and what that means. So I will put that in the chat, and I've actually just realized I've been putting all my links just to the hosts and the panelists, so really sorry about that. I'll make sure I put them in.
These great links, and there's so many.
So you've been getting them and the others, but not actually the audience, which is a bit of a shame. So we'll make sure that they go back out to the audience.
See if you can repost some, Hilary, because they
I'll do that now while you wrap up.
Yeah, well, very brave of you to mention, I was like, NFTs, kind of heard about that, we might need another board talk on that kind of topic. But non-fundable, I think it is around diversity, diversify your risk, and maybe some of your investments, so you never know. Just having a look. And Anthony, thank you for responding to Rose. Have we missed anyone else's comments? Has anyone got any questions to our panel? Because we've only got a couple of minutes and we've had so many amazing links and information. I really seriously think that this is going to be of huge value about where to go. I like that charity one too about the tech. One, it helps with waste, doesn't it? They're kind of recyclable, different options for people to use.
There's one, Rose, I think, I'm not sure if we picked up on it, but Robin Burton had a question around smartphone security, around prevention of cloning for SIM cards and the like. Robin, I'll cover that very briefly. Not being a smartphone expert, probably the two areas that I'd say to definitely be doing on your phone. One, password or PIN code or PIN lock, and two, only particularly for Android users, only installing apps from trusted sources. So Apple's got this pretty locked down. You can only install from the App Store, but for Android, you can install from a number of places. So I'd say just go to the trusted app stores, whether it be the Samsung store or the Google Play Store. Don't download from anywhere suspicious. Ironically, the TAB is one of those ones where their app is not available in the Play Store, so you are downloading it from a suspicious place. So the TAB is a good example of what it's like to not download something from in there. The third one in there is if you're large enough and you've got an IT support function around you, look at a form of managed mobile device management. So that's a software class that allows you to lock a phone down and put rules around the phone and prevent people from moving information out of certain areas. But it also allows you to remote wipe phones if they get lost or stolen. So all the data that you've got on there is secure and protected. So mobile device management, or MDM, is a good way to look at it. But certainly for everyone, I'd say the two are PIN code, password, security, and only install from trusted sources.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, because a lot of our organisations, and bearing in mind as we govern, our responsibility is to look after them. That if you're out in the regions, you're out kind of and working, that you're using a mobile device, and so it is your responsibility. And I know that having two kind of PIN locks on your phone is a really great idea. I once left my work phone at Wellington Airport, which was never good, but thank goodness that they could disable it as well. So there are some things that you can do.
And also think about how much, again, it comes down to risk, how much you're prepared to take on. You know, I had someone call me out the other day, the phone at the front, but I have my license tucked in at the back, so I can drive out the door with just my phone and do payment. But there's a lot of personal details there, but I'm quite happy that if it's not in my pocket, it's in my hand. So it's not going to be stolen, and it's not something that, it's information people can find pretty freely anyway. So how much risk are you prepared to take on board is always going to be the question you should have around how you deal with security for phones, for whatever, for any information.
Like those layers of security, isn't it? So, you know, the first layer is the PIN code. The next one is, are you logged into the apps? You know, the more layers, the harder it is.
Yeah, and probably just to come back to that one as well, Hills, industry standard advice for passwords and PIN codes is to not use something that is going to be easy to work out for people. So, for example, if my license is on the back there, my PIN code is definitely not my birthday.
Good point.
It's all right. Everyone just saw your birthday on your passport.
That's all right. 2 months away. You can send presents to Auckland if you want. But also, I'm quite proud of the fact that I grew up in Upper Hutt, and I tell a lot of people I grew up in Upper Hutt. So one of my security password questions is not, please tell me your hometown that you were born in, because that one's a pretty easy one to guess as well for anyone that knows me.
Very good, very good. All right, I think we're right on time, and 1 o'clock. I just want to say a big thanks to all of you. It's been a wonderful conversation. I've learned heaps. All three of you have provided such great insights and links and information. going to be sharing this out on our website. The webinar will come up and we'll send it out through our e-Pānui. Equally, we'll be pushing it out in our social media channels. And I think we'll do a little bit to share these links out too as well, because they're just so useful. We've had some wonderful comments, so thank you everyone. I think Manawatia Matariki, hope you have a great long weekend, great celebration of Matariki. Got some wonderful comments before we wrap. Thank you so much. So some really, really great comments from our audience. Thank you to our sponsors and take care everyone over the long weekend.